Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here we are recording on a Friday night. We're at the end of the week. We're winding down. We're ready for the big weekend, and we're recording a fresh and crispy episode for you this evening.
What if they determine it's not crispy?
Well, it's freezing cold outside, which makes it crispy to me.
Not fair enough. I understand your logic. That all checks out.
Yeah, I will say that for us in Southwest Virginia here at the beginning of December, it is so absurdly cold.
So for perspective, I just recently, apparently this is like some Arctic blast coming from Russia. Of course it is, right, Tim?
Oh, well,
so
obviously.
it basically feels like Siberia outside is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I went to Firehouse Subs for lunch, which is approximately an under 3-minute walk, and I was like, "Blah, I'm not doing that
I walked
again."
my dog twice, and I was screaming the entire time.
And your poor dog as well, wasn't Finn cold?
He's a Nova Scotia duck tolling retriever. No, Tim, he's from Canada. He thinks this is wonderful. Getting him inside is the problem.
He's from the frozen north. He knows all that stuff.
So for those who don't know, we did a DNA test on Finn because when I got him, I saved him from a random person online, and they were trying to, he got him from like a breeding situation in West Virginia, which for local to us, you understand that adds a whole other element to it. But basically, bad breeders, we don't know what he is. They try to say he was like Chihuahua and Dachshund, but if you've seen Finn, he looks a little bit Dachshund, but he definitely doesn't look Chihuahua. Tim could testify to that when he was screaming at him one day. But he's actually Dachshund, which is a wiener dog. Duck tolling retriever, which is the smallest of like the golden retrievers that come from Canada, and he is a corgi. So he's a very weird mix of animals. So for him, Tim, no. I don't know what it is about being from Canada, but he really likes the cold.
Well, there we are. Well, he likes the cold, but Joy doesn't like the cold.
No. I usually bundle up. It's always, I bundle up a lot, Tim, like 2 layers, top and bottom, right? It's my face. I don't know about anybody else, but it's literally like your face because I'm not going to walk out there in a ski mask. But anyway, I digress.
Or as we say in the UK, a balaclava.
I've heard that been said in America too, but only by because like Givenchy and stuff like that, or Givenchy, like foreign designers. Do you know what I'm talking about, Tim? Like I've heard them call it that, but that's about it. Anyway,
there we go.
Right.
Well, I tell you what, here at the top of the show, I'm going to hand over to Joy, who's got some musical news and some other items.
Well, it is actually very musical news because Dolly Parton launches an open casting call for her original Broadway show coming, Dolly, an original musical.
Excellent.
So all we know so far is it is in the works. She has let it slip that this is going to be, kind of a play on her country and rock and roll, blah, blah, blah. And they have open casting calls. There's not much really going out besides, she stressed, we're looking for talented performers who can capture the spirit of my journey, whether they're experienced or not. We're looking for a gem with a little something special.
There we are. Well, I think Dolly has had a musical in London's West End, because on that podcast, Dolly Parton's America, they spoke about when she visited it and how the security detail looked after Dolly and all that. So I'm surprised that she hasn't had anything on Broadway before.
I mean, it's very possible this is a rebrand of that, but it says if you'd like to find out more, if you're interested in auditioning, dollymusical.com. Very hard to remember, everybody. And it is set to open in 2026.
There we are. We'll all be looking forward to that. I need to do a New York City trip. I haven't been to New York City for such a long time. So maybe I could try and get there in 26 and see the Dolly musical.
I highly suggest it, obviously.
Absolutely.
Very on brand. All right, what's next, Tim?
Well, I think you said you had one other
I
item.
have my little bit of personal news. Tim's like, Joy, you're supposed to talk more. I was just going to say, I do, in fact, have a Spotify Wrapped this year. I will not tell anybody any details yet, though some of the things I thought would happen may have happened. My list was infiltrated. We'll discuss next week when it is my episode. But Joy did, in fact, get a Spotify Wrapped this year.
Fantastic. Well, that is good news. I know it was touch and go last year, and I know last year the Wrapped gods were not shining in your favor.
Now, I do have one question for Tim before he takes over. How do you feel about the use of AI as far as Spotify Wrapped has gone?
Well, I'll come on to that later.
Okay. Well, then it's all coming full circle, everybody. I might have predicted what this episode's about. All right. Take it from here, Tim.
Okay, so I've just got one piece of music news and then a thing that came up that I wanted Joy to have a look at. So the first piece of music news is next year there's going to be a Brotherhood of Rock tour. And the Brotherhood of Rock is Styx, Kevin Cronin from REO Speedwagon, who obviously has fallen out with REO Speedwagon. So he now has a solo band, and Don Felder, who is estranged from the Eagles. So you have one band, two estranged musicians from their original bands. They're all going out on tour as the Brotherhood of Rock.
Sounds like they met up at a party one weekend and said, what can we do to get a bunch of money? It's a very random thrown together assortment of people, but all right.
I mean, all of those people, they need money. And plus, there's no money in back catalog sales and they're probably making nothing off streaming. So, I mean, good luck to them in that respect. But yes, this does seem like a people that vaguely know each other and said, yeah, let's do a tour.
Woohoo, let's go. Vegas, Vegas. I just see them like getting I don't know. It's very, let's get the band back together, right?
It is. I mean, I've seen REO Speedwagon. Would I go and see Kevin Cronin with his solo band?
That's what I was thinking. I was like, I need to see what the price of the tickets are before I make any decisions. Are they through Ticketmaster? Because you got to add another $70 from whatever the advertised price is.
Exactly. I mean,
before we know.
I mean, they'll be coming across the entire country playing the Enormo Dome and the something else and the Jiffy Lube Live and all that sort of stuff.
Why is it always the weirdest names? But anyway, PNC Arena, whatever.
There we are. The Bergerland Center, which is not called that. It's the Roanoke Civic Center. It always has been, and it always will be.
But for some reason, people randomly call it the Berkeley.
Well, they have like an endorsement deal naming type thing with the Bergman Center.
I know. But you hear it randomly.
I've never called it that, and no one locally has ever called it that.
No. And for those who are like me, who grew up in the area, like even younger than Tim, like it was always the Salem Civic Center. The Berglund thing just became later in life, and it always just makes me think of burgundy the color. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel like the building should be maroon. But anyway, that's a whole other debate for another time.
There we go. Well, the other thing I had for you before we get into my topic is NPR Music, or NPR in general, and their music part. They published a list of the 50 best albums of 2024. Now, I looked through this list, and me, I'm not super up on this modern pop music. And there's probably like 2 or 3 artists I've heard of out of 50. I mean, I literally have not heard of the people in this list, but I thought what I would do, I'm not going to go through the whole list. I'm not going to read it all out. I mean, you've got some artists, Kali Uchis, MKG, Maddie Diaz. I'm not going to go on. But anyhow, it's their top 50 albums of 2024. I thought it'd be interesting to see, out of the 50, how many Joy has heard of. Now, Joy's a lot more connected to the world of contemporary music than I am. But I thought for someone who's well-rounded like Joy, who maybe doesn't have the same narrow blinkers and music tastes that I do, I thought, I wonder how many of this 50 Joy has heard of.
Well, there's more than what Tim has heard of. I could say that. Mm-hmm. So I knew who Tyla was. Tyla self, her album was called Tyla. It's a named album. I knew who that was because of TikTok. She had a song. So Tyla. Beyonce, Cowboy Carter was the Beyonce album she did that she put out a few country songs. Sabrina Carpenter is the one that me and Ian and Charlie all agree was written by AI. Mm-hmm. So Short and Sweet was on there. Tyler, the Creator, I do know who that is. He's kind of like a rap, R&B, hip hop. I have no idea. I don't know how to say the name of the album. Didn't know who that was. I know who The Cure was. Mm-hmm. Songs of a Last World. And then I knew who Kendrick Lamar was, G and X. So I knew 7 people.
7 out of 50. I just want to know who are they compiling this list with? I mean, as I said, you're a lot more switched on than I am. but I have
It was
nothing.
like reading a foreign. Oh, no, I lie. I didn't say Charlie XCX Brat. I didn't put that on there. That was part of the seven. I just realized I skipped it. I went from Beyonce. So I do know Charlie XCX Brat, which I told that to Tim one time before and he thought I was having a seizure. But anyway, it's still seven. But yeah, that is what I know.
So we have the sum total of seven. Well, good luck NPR with your list. I'm hoping somebody knows who these artists are, but Joy and I do not.
There was a girl in there called Gorilla, and I think I may have seen someone refer to an artist named Gorilla on TikTok, but I didn't feel comfortable saying I knew any more than that because I don't know any of their music. Do you know what I mean, Tim?
Sure.
That's the only other thing on the list that I was like, I've seen that before, but maybe it was just talking about an actual gorilla. I'm not sure. We'll never know. Anyway, all right, Tim, on to your topic.
Okay, so my topic. This is really going to be an annual tradition in the No Name Music House, especially now I'm
I didn't see this
embracing.
coming at all based
Yeah,
on what I said
embracing the
earlier.
world of the Spotify. So this week, Spotify Wrapped dropped. And this is my second ever Spotify Wrapped. So I thought, well, this is going to be really interesting. I've been doing a lot of listening with Spotify Wrapped, and I've been doing the 1001 album challenge. I've been listening to a lot of music. I've been putting a lot of music that's been in my digital collection I've had on my computer. And I've been putting those artists into Spotify and listening to them as I've been doing it. And I thought, do you know what? This time is going to be so good. My Spotify Wrapped is going to be a really good representation of what I listen to all year.
And then the No Name Music Cast came in and messed it all up.
No.
Oh, that's good.
Yes, it's messed up. It's terrible. But the reason it's messed up, is I have a playlist that I play as background music with the band.
Oh, see, this happened to me too. I had two or three that messed up mine. All right, continue.
Yeah. And the playlist has probably got 50 hours of music in it, something like that. It's thousands of songs on there. But when I get to a gig, so when we're setting up, I set it going, I connect it via Bluetooth to the mixing desk with the band. And then when we're sound checking, we fire it up to check all the speakers are working. And I just leave it running. And then when we get to the break, we just pull the faders up. It's playing the music. And then you turn the faders down. And at the end of the night, I switch it off. But what's happened is that because it's repeating a lot of those songs over and over again, it broke my Spotify Wrapped. My Spotify Wrapped is mostly the band's playlist.
Well, at least it wasn't the No Name Music Cat's fault.
No, I mean, like last year was different because I was sort of learning how to use Spotify and how I was going to incorporate it in my life. And also last year, there was a lot of songs from wrestling on there because I went to a lot of wrestling events and I'd listen to that in the car going.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was very disappointed. I was so excited when it came out on Wednesday. I was like, yes, this is the one. We can really see what I've been doing this year. And then I looked at the various stuff and I was like, oh, come on.
So some of the things I have warned happened to mine, and I'm just going to leave it at that. We'll discuss more next week, Tim. But I understand your sadness a little bit.
There we are. Well, the other thing is I didn't think this year's Spotify Wrapped, its presentation was as good as last year. Last year, they got a lot more granular. They were going into genres. They were going into a lot of different stuff. And it was an interesting read. This year, it was just like your top 5 artists, your top 5 songs, and then a big playlist of everything that you've listened to throughout the year and what podcasts you listen to. And that was it. The other interesting thing that they did this year is they had an AI-generated podcast that I listened to. And it's made in conjunction with Google. And it's like 2 hosts on there, a male host and a female host. And they are talking about your Spotify Wrapped and talking about all the things that you've listened to throughout the year. Now, I found that very interesting, not so much for the content, but the way it was done with these AI voices, that there was a couple of moments where a pronunciation was off, so you knew it was not real people doing it. But if you listen to that like half casually, it actually sounded like people.
So I didn't get the AI podcast that I know some people get. I got something different, Tim. So you know how I said in mine that I was worried the lo-fi and the hi-fi kind of stuff that I listened to was going to creep in? Let's just say it did. Won't give you away, but yeah, it did. I got a person, the guy who created one of the channels that I like, talking to me. He did a video talking to me directly about him being on my list.
Oh,
I don't know if it was real. I assume it was real. I don't think it was AI, but that's what I got. But I know some other people got the podcast. I think it just depended on what your list said, but it was very weird.
yeah. The thing is about the podcast is it's not so much for the Spotify Wrapped, but it makes you wonder: is this the future of entertainment? I mean, do you put into like some kind of prompt and say, well, I want a podcast about this for this duration, and it needs to have this many hosts, and it needs to have 52 jokes in it, and it must talk about this, that, the other, and then you hit go, and then it generates it. And is that the future of entertainment?
I don't know, but you talking about this on here feels like very podcast inception. It's like a podcast inside a podcast. I'm not sure.
Because right now you can generate lots of things using AI. I think the Coca-Cola commercial, or Waitrose commercial, or something was generated with AI this year.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, say like you're a fan of a TV show. Let's, for example, an 80s TV show with a talking car, for example. It had 4 seasons. Okay, 4 seasons of that TV show. And there's 97 episodes or whatever it is.
Okay.
And you want a 5th season. But of course, they never made a 5th season because, it never got made. But will we get to the point where you can go into some kind of prompt and say, I want the 5th season of Knight Rider. I want 23 episodes. I want everyone to look like this. It must have the car like that. And in the various episode plots, there's going to be truckers, and then there's going to be independent logging operations and all the things that are in Knight Rider. Then you hit go, and then it's going to generate you 22 TV episodes. Is this where this is going?
I don't know, but to keep in perspective, I do use AI all the time at work when I'm like doing emails and policy and writing long things, Tim. I literally just say AI, do this, do that, and it does it. So I mean, could be. But to be fair,
that's more of a summary consolidation type tool type thing.
But it's not that far off if you think about the way technology advances.
No, but I said, you imagine that you want a podcast, you want a film, you want a TV show. You can just generate it a prompt, and then it's just going to give you exactly what you want. I mean, will we get to the point where everything is so unique to what people's tastes are, where there are no TV shows being made because you just wait for someone to generate the one that you want to see?
I mean, it does put a whole nother thought on instant gratification, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could be right, Tim. You're probably onto something. You're going to get us shut down, but yeah, sure.
but that's what it made me think when I was listening to that. Is that you can call it like maybe it's a neat trick, if you will.
Fair enough.
But I was like, is this the future of where podcasting, for example, would go? You don't need all the people from NPR creating this high quality journalistic content when you can just like generate stuff like that.
I mean, it's very possible. Kind of sad though in its own route, but I guess that's a debate for another time.
Absolutely. Well, this isn't an AI podcast. This is a music podcast. So let's
the robots have not actually taken over this podcast. My name is Joy.
Not yet, anyway.
Somebody out there was like, "Wow, Joy, that was pretty cliche." But anyway.
Well, anyhow, let me give you some stats from my Spotify of this year. So I listened to 134,675 minutes this year on Spotify, which is like 1/3 of the year or something. I worked it out. It's quite.
Did you ask ChatGPT how long that was?
No, I got the calculator out and figured it out. It's something like that.
Okay, boomer.
It's a lot. It's a lot of minutes. Let me tell you.
All right.
I also spent 30,771 minutes listening to podcasts. I mean,
that seems on brand considering.
Yeah, I always wake up to podcasts, and especially on the weekends, I listen to a lot more in the mornings than I do in the week.
Fair enough.
My biggest listening day was October the 9th with 818 minutes.
Were you at a gig?
No, I think I was flying back from Vegas through the night, and I just had it on for hours. And I had it on in the airport, and then I had it on on the plane, and I had it on when I got back here. That's where that came from.
That checks out.
Absolutely. So my top 5 podcasts for the year. The number 1 podcast as ever is the No Name Music Cast, not because I like the sound of my own voice, purely because after I publish the episodes, I proof listen to them. I normally have it on at work in the
Yeah,
background.
it was my top one too.
Because I like to proof. At the beginning, I used to listen to the episodes a lot more because I was trying to see where we could make things better. I still do that to some degree. But my main goal now by listening to the episodes is to proof them. There's been some times where I've published the podcast and there's been a bad edit, or I've had a bit that I wasn't supposed to, should have deleted off or something. So it's important that I do that proof listen just to be on the safe side. So that was my number one.
Makes
my number
sense.
two was NPR's Planet Money, which is
Just so you know, guys, it's actually because he likes to hear his own voice, just so everybody knows. All right, continue.
yeah, my number two was NPR's Planet Money, which is a podcast I very much enjoy. My number three was The Indicator from Planet Money by NPR. That is a sub podcast of Planet Money.
So very niche of you, Tim.
Number four is 80s Wrestling, the podcast, which
Of
I
course
believe,
it is.
yeah, which I believe featured last year. Sometimes in the afternoons at work, if it's a little quiet, I'll put that on in the background and listen to 80s Wrestling podcast.
Seems very on brand.
Talking about the golden era, of course, you know.
Yeah.
And then my number five was Wisdom from the Top with Guy Raz, which again is a luminary NPR type podcast. It's not one of my favorites, and I'm surprised it's on the list.
Maybe it's just one that seems to like, come on. You know what I mean, Timmy? You let it play, but you don't really think about it.
It could be, or maybe because those episodes tend to be longer. Maybe that's what it is.
I don't know.
Could be. Anyhow, all right. So now we're going to get into the top five artists. Now, the number one artist this year, which surprised me in a way, was Queen, because I haven't listened to a lot of Queen music this year. Not as much as I had last year. But I wonder again whether there is Queen music on that band playlist and that's what's polluted it.
I mean, you can't really be mad about it, though, Tim. It's very on brand for you.
No, that's true. But I mean, I listened
worse.
this year. I listened to a massive Pete Townsend box set. It was like 12 CDs or 15 CD box set that was on Spotify. I actually tried to buy it, but it was completely sold. It was a limited edition and it sold out. But all the tracks are on Spotify. And every weekend I've been working through this box set and I've been really enjoying it. And I've listened to hours and hours and hours of this, and that doesn't even show on here. And I really thought Pete Townsend was going to be my top artist, but he's not even in the top five. Very, very bizarre.
Do you have to wonder how accurate it really is? So, all right, continue.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a SQL query on a database, really. There's nothing. That's all it is.
I mean, it's not that advanced, but is there some ulterior motives, Tim? Is there like an alter ego telling us what we should have been listening to? I don't know.
I don't know. Anyhow, number two artist.
Tim really avoided that. All right, continue.
Number two artist was Joe Bonamassa, and I could probably say that's maybe accurate. Again, it's on the band's playlist.
He's someone you talk about a lot.
Yeah, and I like Joe Bonamassa, and he's come up on a lot of playlists and stuff that I've made on my premium shuffles and what have you, and I've listened to some of his music. He's a fabulous guitar player. He's somebody who's really done well for himself without sort of music industry support, and he's written some good music, and he's a good guy, so I like Joe Bonamassa. Number three is the Beatles.
I mean, I feel like you love the Beatles, but I don't know if there's something you listen to regularly.
No, that's the thing. I like the Beatles. I'll listen to Beatles music, but I can't say as I remember listening to a lot of Beatles. And the funny thing about that is it's not even on that band playlist.
I don't know. Maybe you just love the Beatles more than you ever realized. I don't know what to tell you, Tim.
Maybe. Number four is Led Zeppelin. Now, this is most definitely band playlist
I literally
pollution.
did like a step back, like, was it really? When Tim said that one. Yeah, it has to be your band playlist, because I'm sorry, Tim, I don't see you listening to Led Zeppelin very often.
No, I like Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin are great. And
But it just doesn't feel like you're listening to them on the regular.
No, absolutely not.
Well, fair enough. I mean, that is very Southwest Virginia local band, so I see why that's on your playlist.
Absolutely. And then number five, which is probably accurate, is the mighty Van Halen.
That I would have thought would have been higher up the list, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to a lot of Van Halen this year. There was two box sets that came out for Van Halen from the Van Hagar years. But when I listen to those, I'm mostly listening to the CDs or actually some of the records. I bought the full box set, which has CDs and records in it. So if I've listened to any Van Halen, Van Hagar, in fact, it's probably going to be on my box sets rather than on Spotify. But it tracks. I listened to a couple of Van Halen tracks driving home today, in fact.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. What's next?
Okay, so I'm just going to give you the top 5 songs. I've got the whole list, the top 100, and I'm going to cherry pick some of those out and we can discuss those. But let me just give you the top 5. Okay. And again, we have local band backing music pollution going on here. I'll do it as number 5. Number 5, that would be Led Zeppelin's Trampled Underfoot.
Of course.
Number
that
4,
checks out.
Yeah, number 4 would be The Who's Won't Get Fooled Again.
Good
number
choice.
3 would be Led Zeppelin's Kashmir. Number 2 will be Led Zeppelin's Good Times, Bad Times. And coming in at number 1, Led Zeppelin's Ramble On.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That just makes me sad for you.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could go in and delete some things out, but no, that's why I haven't even really posted this anywhere because it's just not, this is not even representative of things that I super like. You know, if it was like top songs was David Hasselhoff's something or other, I'd be happy with that. I'd own that. But this, I don't feel
Tom
this is
Jones in there, but
yeah, this is not. Yeah, that's another thing. I listened to a lot of Tom Jones this year. That's not on there.
Well, mine looks better than Tim's, but not by a lot.
Yeah, it was incredibly disappointing. I was expecting, with the diversity of music I've listened to this year, that it would be super representative of that.
The other thing for me is, as much as I know Tim knows who Led Zeppelin is, obviously I do. Obviously, they're, a favorite in the area. Me and you have talked about Led Zeppelin at very bare minimum on this podcast. Do you know what I mean, Tim?
Sure.
In the grand scheme of bands that come up, they've come up -2.
Yeah, I like Led Zeppelin. At one point I did have all the albums on vinyl. They're great. Jimmy Page guitar player. I mean, it's good stuff, but it's not my go-to. I'm not going to turn it off if it comes on, but I'm not going to think, well, maybe I'll pop Led Zeppelin 4 on tonight. It's not super what I'm into, but very weird. Very, very weird.
I mean, it's fine. John Paul Jones Arena is in Virginia. Robert Plant looks like a pretty cool dude, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so very disappointed with this. That's why I have not posted it really anywhere, because I was disappointed.
I've been just saving it for the podcast too, so I understand.
There we are. Okay. So what I'm going to do in this episode, I'm going to go through the top 100 songs, and I'm going to try and pick out the ones I know are not on the band backing music playlist. And maybe let's hope that some of the songs I've enjoyed this year are going to come out.
Let's do it.
Okay. So looking at the list, the first one that I see here that's most definitely not on the band's backing music, that would be one that I thought would be a lot higher in the rankings. And this is Foo Fighters, and this is the song Everlong.
Well, I was thinking that too. We were talking about bands that you've talked a lot about this year, and you kind of went down, I feel like a Foo Fighters resurgence, right?
Yeah.
Kind of discussed that. You went down that kind of hole.
I've played 35 gigs this year, something like that. And every time I've driven up to a gig, I've listened to a Foo Fighters album. Then when I burn through all of those, I listen to all the Dave Grohl solo stuff. And then I got into Chris Shiflett, who's the guitar player. And then I'm about to get into Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Riders. So, I'm engrossing myself in this world. And I really thought some of that would be represented, but it's not. But yeah, I've listened to Everlong a lot. This is a song that maybe passed me by when it came out. And I tell you what really got me onto the genius of Everlong is that when David Letterman wrapped up his Late Show, or the Late Show with David Letterman in 2015, he had a closing montage, and that closing montage had the Foo Fighters playing live in the studio, and they played Everlong because he said that is his favorite song in the world. And since I've got back into David Letterman, they have that posted on their YouTube channel, and I've watched it a few times. And I don't know, it's such a good song. And I've even gone back and seen old performances of them doing it. But that's the thing, you're driving in the car, because like I'm lucky with my Apple CarPlay. You can just press the button on the steering wheel and tell it to play things, and it'll just play it straight off. I've done that with Everlong quite a lot.
I mean, to be fair, if I had to in America, as far as songs that were super popular from the Foo Fighters, Everlong is probably their number one song.
Oh,
I don't know if it was as big in the UK, but it was definitely huge here.
I think it was. I mean, when this was out, I think this is like early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s.
It was like 98 or something like that.
I was not into listening to new music. I was probably very dismissive of new music, but now it's old enough for me to decide that it's a classic.
What does that say about you, Tim? We'll never know.
You don't want to know what goes on in my brain with things like that.
All right, what's next?
Okay, now this is one I knew was going to be on here, and I just knew it. And this it made me smile when I saw it, and I'm sure your sister will like this too. This will be Harry Styles with the song "Sweet Creature."
To be fair, this may be a problem in my list. I was very concerned, but Brady has really influenced me and Tim this year. But Tim, do you think you went out of your way to listen to it since the episode, or you think you just listened to it so much leading up to the episode?
No, I've not listened to it once since we posted the episode. However, when we recorded it, Joy sent me the list to listen to. And I've got this little slot. I come back from lunch, I get to my desk, and then I would put on things like this. And it's like the playlist she sent me was 40 minutes or something. So I get back into my work, I put my little playlist on, and it's running in the background. And I did that for a week, 10 days. And then the episode, we didn't record straight away. I think Joy was away, or we changed the topic.
We ended up pushing it off for 2 weeks or something. I can't remember. Yeah.
So 2 weeks or 3 weeks goes by. And then, of course, I'm not super familiar with this music because it's not something I traditionally listen to. So, a week or so before the episode, what am I doing? I'm coming back from lunch and I'm putting my little playlist on, and it's just done that a lot. So there we are.
So Harry Styles infiltrated the list.
Harry Styles, Sweet Creature, it's on there. Also, Canyon Moon is on there too.
There you go, Brady. All for you. All right, what's next?
Okay, so the next one, this is a classic. I don't think this is on the band list, but this is a song I really do enjoy. This is the Rolling Stones from Let It Bleed, and this is Gimme Shelter.
I mean, this is probably one of my favorite Rolling Stones songs. I will say this is the greatest example of a song that, without paying attention to it, has a whole different vibe than what they're singing about.
Sure.
And I've talked many times about the interesting thing for me when it comes to the Rolling Stones is their songs are always Keith Richards and Mick Jagger. When they write songs together, they're just so they have I don't know if it's a jazzy feel, but they have they're not like your just alternative rock or regular 80s rock or anything of that nature. They tend to have a lot of soul to their rock music. And that transcends in what they're singing about.
Yeah, I mean, they were very much influenced by African American blues and
very
R&B.
Bluesy. That's a better way to say it, yeah.
Yeah, and they, what's interesting about this song is at the time, Brian Jones was still in the Rolling Stones, but he does not feature on this track. And Keith Richards is playing the rhythm and the lead on it, which is very unusual.
I don't think I ever knew that, but that doesn't surprise me. They're all very talented.
Yeah, and it also very prominently features in the season 2, episode 1 episode of Knight Rider, Goliath.
That's a very specific thing, but okay.
Yeah, so it has that connection for me. And when I think when we was in Vegas, I maybe was looking at the Vegas Strip, and I listened to I listened to that, and it was just everything came flooding back.
Fair enough. I mean, it's a good song, and it's just a shout away,
Exactly. It's probably my favorite Rolling Stones song.
I've never really thought about it, but I think it reigns up there for me. I do like Beast of Burden a lot, though.
Beast of Burden's a great song. The problem with Beast of Burden is we play it in Flagget Hill, and I feel it's done to death for me. But it's one thing to have a song like the Confectionery Section songs, where you can play them or you hear them on TV or whatever like that. But it's one thing when you're actually playing that song and you're gigging that song over and over again. it burns you out on a new level.
I mean, that is very fair. I will say, Beast of Burden's up there for me. I really like Start Me Up, though, and Jumping Jack Flash as well.
Yeah, Jumping Jack Flash is great. Start Me Up is very good. Interesting fact, that opening riff, that is played by Keith, and he's playing that on an Ernie Ball Music Man Silhouette guitar.
I like how Tim says these things like I would ever know if they were wrong because I wouldn't. Like, y'all, Tim could literally have said anything. I'd be like, yeah, sure, sounds great. I have no idea, but sure. If you guys are Googling, you're our official keeping us in check. I just find it funny when he says it like I'm gonna know if it's right.
Well, he traditionally plays a Telecaster, and he at the time decided that Music Man Silhouette guitars were the best new modern guitar that you could buy, and that's played on a Music Man Silhouette. So there we are.
There we go, guys. The more you know.
Absolutely.
All right, what's next?
Okay, so this is a song which probably is often on repeat for me, and especially over the Halloween period, I had this one playing a lot. And this is Michael Jackson's Thriller.
That doesn't surprise me. I would have been shocked if it wasn't on there. I feel like Thriller has come up in every No Name Music Cast episode, like every other one for like the last 2 years, to be honest.
Yeah, and as I said, I spoke of a few episodes back about the One Song podcast where they did a deep dive into Thriller and they went through all the stems and all the different sound effects and stuff like that, which was absolutely fantastic. But I don't know, Thriller is just so good. And especially now the video on YouTube, they've like got a 4K upscale of it. And you watch it on not even so much on a TV, watch it on a high resolution computer monitor. And the detail in it is amazing.
I know. It's just everything about it. It's just perfect. It does, and they did a really good job, even if you're not super into music. Like, let's say you are more of a movie person or whatever. It meets all of the genres just perfectly.
Yeah.
That's why it sold so well.
Yeah. It is such a song. And when you hear the demo, Starlight, 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 Sun, you should be happy that it turned into Thriller and it was not called Starlight.
When I think of Starlight, it makes me think of Xanadu, like the Olivia Newton-John, like, or do you know what I'm talking about, Tim? The roller skating musical. That's what Starlight makes me think of. And also there's that cafe in New York called like Starlight Cafe where they do like the Broadway numbers while you're eating or whatever.
Yeah, it's Ellen's Stardust Diner.
That's what it is.
It's right.
That's what I think of when I think of Starlight.
Yeah, it's right on Broadway, just off Times Square. And as Joy says, a lot of the people who work on those Broadway musicals, they do shifts in Ellen's Stardust Diner as a sort of wait staff. But between waiting, they sing in there to you.
Yep.
And it is quite the experience.
It is. If you never went, I would highly suggest going. I've been once, maybe even twice, actually, looking back. I think it was the same trip, but I went back twice. But it's an experience. But that's what I think of when I think of Starlight.
Interesting fact about Ellen's Stardust Diner. There is a club next to it called the Iridium. The Iridium is a place where Les Paul used to play every Monday night. And I was lucky enough to see and meet Les Paul on 2 occasions when he played there.
Oh, that's where you were talking about, you met about. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And even now they have Les Paul Mondays where they have like guitar greats go down there and perform. And it's a club that has blues and jazz and rock. It's only it's like a basement club. But lots of prominent people have played there. The interesting thing is they share their kitchen with Ellen's Stardust Diner. That's where I was going with that.
It all comes full circle, everybody. I was just thinking, well, it's beside it, so Tim just linked them together.
I also, once, when I was at the Iridium, obviously cooked by the Ellen Stardust Diner kitchen, I had the best piece of fried chicken I've ever had.
What a very specific thing. I think I had like breakfast food when I was there. It was more like, you know what I mean? Like eggs, like very diner-esque American breakfast. I think that's what I ate when I was there. Yeah,
I think I've had that in Ellen Stardust Diner, and I've also had like a blue plate special roast turkey something type thing before. But yeah, when the fried chicken I had in the kitchen of Ellen Stardust Diner, which is in the Iridium, it was like a huge piece of KFC, but it was boneless and it was delicious.
Well, Well, if they're listening, Tim just wants you to know it was amazing.
And they
Keep
do.
doing you.
I know the wait staff of Ella Stardust Diner and the folks in the Iridium. They all tune in every week.
Fair enough. On our Broadway news, Tim, I just want you to know I went and saw Wicked a second time in theater.
Oh,
So
was
I
it
think
one of
it's-
the? Yeah, was it a performance where you could sing?
No, I didn't go to the singing one, but I wanted Charlie to see it. Though it's crazy, though, is looking back, Tim, I think this might be the first movie I've ever seen twice in a theater. Like paid and went and watched it twice. I can't think of another time I've done that in my entire life.
I saw when the first Star Wars came out, the first Disney Star Wars. I think I saw that twice. I saw Rogue One twice. And the first time, I think it was the first of the Ghostbusters remake films. What was the first one? Ghostbusters Afterlife. That was it.
Yeah.
I saw that twice in the cinema. I won't be seeing that Frozen Empire one ever again because it was terrible. But I saw all those twice, and I think growing up there've been a few times where there's something that I really enjoyed. I mean, like Bohemian Rhapsody, I think I saw that 4 times in the theaters.
I'm trying to think back, but I really can't think of another time in my life where I went and saw something twice in theater.
And you know, I think I saw Rocket Man twice.
I mean, I know I saw Rocket Man at home. I saw Rocket Man in theater and then I watched it later. I saw Bohemian Rhapsody in theater, then I watched it again later. You know what I mean, Tim? But I think I was home all those times. I don't know. This is just the first time I was like, this movie. To be fair, though, I got really excited. I was like, I really want Charlie to see it. So emotionally, it was a push to make him go. So 3 hours later, I will say it's amazing. I'm really excited for part 2 that comes out next year.
There we go. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I mean, as I said, I saw it on Broadway. I don't know if I'm terribly excited about seeing a film adaptation of it. I mean, I enjoyed the Broadway show. I like the spectacle of a Broadway show, regardless of the story or the music. The whole spectacle of the production is something to be enjoyed outside of the story and the music and all that stuff. But I don't know if I'm enough into that world to be wanting to go and see the film.
I will be interested to see, for those who have seen the part 1 and don't know much about the Wicked franchise, you know, it was based off the book, which I read all the books. So you had the all set of books, and then you had the writer in the 90s who actually made Wicked based off the all set of children's books, right? And he even made Elphaba's name after the original author. But what I'll be curious to see is the second half of Wicked is quite dark. Like, it's not happy-go-lucky. The first part was very, you know what I mean, Tim, very upbeat when they're going to school and everything. I'll be curious to see what the reception is when it flips the switch. For those who aren't up on their Wicked knowledge.
I wonder whether they will Hollywood it a bit for wider acceptance.
Maybe, but it doesn't seem like they wanted to do that. It seems like they really pushed to keep that out of the part 1 at least. I mean, they may make it a little bit more gentle, but it is what it is. I'm not going to ruin it. All right, what's next?
Okay, so this one is an interesting one. This is one I've heard a few times.
Yeah.
But I don't remember actually hitting repeat on it. But here we are. The stats do not lie. And this is John Williams and the Superman March.
That's so random, Tim. Like, I mean, I know what it is, but do you really think you played it that much the entire
I mean, I must have.
I just see Tim get ready for work every day with the Superman march playing in the background. I mean, it's relatively short, right?
I mean, it's 5 minutes long.
Oh no, never mind. I'm just thinking of the intro. I was like, maybe it just kind of plays in the middle and you've never paid attention.
I mean, certainly of iconic John Williams music, it's up there. I mean, like you have the Imperial March from Star Wars, you have the Star Wars music. And, he's worked on so much music in that style, Raiders of the Lost Ark and things like that. But I don't know, the Superman March is really iconic. It really is.
I mean, it's fabulous. I just can't imagine you listening to it enough that it shows up on your Spotify rap. So.
I know. I mean, I love the original Superman films. The first Superman film is great. Superman 2 is kind of meh, but the Richard Donner director's cut of that is absolutely fantastic. And many people will tell you Superman 3 is awful, but I think Superman 3 with Richard Pryor is by far my favorite of the Superman films. Well, that's the one where he's working for a company. He's doing a data entry job for a company, and he's not making good money. You know, this is in the 80s, and he's making $2.75 an hour or something like that. And he gets his paycheck at the end of 2 weeks, and it's not a lot of money. And he's like, how am I supposed to pay my bills? How am I supposed to pay my rent, etc.? And then he gets chatting to somebody in the break room, and they were talking about how rounding works, where there's lots of these half cents and quarter cents in the systems that get rounded off. And he says, well, what happens to them? He said, well, they just get rounded off. They just go somewhere. And where do they go? He said, nobody knows where they go. So being a computer programmer, he writes a program for all the rounded up, all the rounded down quarter and half cents to go to him. So the next 2 weeks rolls round, and the guy's handing out these paper paychecks, and he says to the guy, he says, he said, I've put in for some expenses. And the guy goes, really? He says, yeah. So he looks through and he's like, oh, Gus Gorman, there we are. And he gives him this check, and he opens it up, and it has like $250,000 or something on this check.
Seems unlikely, but okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, it starts an investigation internally at this company. Who's been fiddling the money. And they're up in like this big boardroom director suite. And he says, you know, if the person is smart, they will not identify themselves. Only an idiot would draw attention to the fact they've done this. And Richard Pryor pulls in the car park in a soft top red Ferrari with the top down, with music blaring, doing a donut.
Mm-hmm. I saw that coming. And it was his name on the check, so it wasn't that hard to figure out.
Well, I mean, you know, in real life, if you did that, someone would just go through the check stubs and figure out who that money was paid to. But of course,
the other thing is, if you've ever read payroll tip, if there's any type of rounding error, it's always going up. The person who's being paid ends up getting more money. You know what I mean, Tim? I've worked in 4 different payroll systems, and not one of them have ever round down.
I know.
But anyway, sorry. I digress.
Joy, it's a film and it's Hollywood.
Fine. I'm just saying. As someone who's ran payroll for multiple companies, I see flaws in the theory. It's like when someone's watching a movie about their life story. That is not correct. Anyway, I digress. That's funny, though. But it makes me laugh that that was in your Wrapped, because I just can't see you listening to the Superman March that much.
No, but obviously did. You know, these statistics do not lie. And unsurprisingly, that is not in the band background music playlist.
All right, what's next?
Okay, now this one I'm very excited about. Okay. I couldn't be happier to have this in my top songs of 2024. This would be from our friends Off, and this would be Electrica Salsa.
Of course it is. To be fair, I didn't know about this until Tim introduced me to it on our podcast. And he was going through a few weeks where I feel like you were listening to this on repeat. Because he was like, Joy, you have to hear this. And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, I discovered it on the internet. I can't even remember how now.
That guy
and it's just like Europop hit from the 80s that, you know, we didn't get this song in England, so it's completely new to me, but it's so incredibly catchy. We definitely
didn't get it in America either. The bar ba ba.
Yeah, ba 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 ba. Electrica and Salsa.
That's all I remember is a blonde dude with a very German-looking blonde dude with a hat on.
Yeah, and also he sort of speaks the lyrics, but he speaks them in English.
Speak singing, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a rock and roll classic right there, Electrica Salsa. I mean, yeah, this is one of those big songs.
I just like that it made it into your rap, because there was like a week where Tim kept writing me going, I can't get out of my head, Joy. It's everywhere. It's everything I do.
Well, I can tell you that on Spotify it has 2 million plays.
So you're not alone.
I mean, to be fair, Off don't have much else going on. Out of the 5 songs listed on Spotify, the 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are various versions of Electrica Salsa.
You know, they know what sells, Tim. All right, what's next?
Okay, so this is somebody who I saw this year. This
Okay.
is the Red Rocker, and this would be his song "I Can't Drive 55." Sammy Hagar.
I always think about this song because, you know, the original I Can't Drive 55 was when in America, back in the day, all of the highways used to be 55. They're not anymore. They're 65 and 75 and so on and so forth, right, Tim? So
Yeah.
I always think of him and think about like if they should update the song.
Well, do you know why all the highways were 55?
I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard a particular reason.
The reason was leading up to the early 60s and early 70s, lots of roads in the United States did not have speed limits. And
Yeah.
especially as you got out west, it was you could do pretty much what you wanted. But in the 1970s, there was that whole OPEC trade embargo thing with fuel, and
Oh, yeah.
there was lots of shortages, and the Saudis were not selling us oil, and there was oil shortages, and it was a whole international trading mess when it came to oil, gasoline, and all that kind of stuff.
This I am familiar with.
Yeah. So the United States government implemented the 55 miles an hour speed limit in order to save fuel.
Oh, that makes sense. I know it was like a universal thing at one point, but I was never quite sure why.
Yeah, and that is the reason. And that speed limit has stuck for a lot of US roads. Now, most sort of if it's not in a built-up area, typically your road is going to be 55. And then when you get onto like the interstates, some of them are 55,
Major
65,
highways.
75. I think if you get out west, some of them get up to 80 and 85, depending on where you are in the desert and stuff like that. But majority around here, it's like 65, 70, 75, something like that.
There you go. Who knew that this podcast would teach you so much about American roadways
Exactly. And 1970s trade embargoes with gasoline.
that have no effect on us currently? Anyway, all right. What's next, Tim?
Okay, so this one, I've listened to a lot of Pink Floyd this year, but again, I think it's a lot on CD. I've been enjoying Pink Floyd on a Sunday. I've had the Pink Floyd Sunday thing going
Pink
on.
Floyd on a Sunday.
I mean, why would you not listen to Pink Floyd on a Sunday? But of course, it's on CD. It's not in Spotify. But
Yeah.
this one has come up, and this is Another Brick in the Wall Part 2.
I mean, to be fair, if Charlie had a Spotify rap, this would definitely be on there. Everything Pink Floyd would. So I hear this song regularly. I have it on vinyl. I mean, you can't really. I find it very interesting that I go through like periods of time where I don't want to hear Pink Floyd at all, and then I want to hear it all the time for like 6 weeks, and then I put it back away.
Hey, actually, here's a question. What is Charlie's listening mechanism of choice?
YouTube music mostly.
That what he likes.
It is, but I think that's just by default because that's just the first one he clicks. But he does have Spotify too. But Charlie definitely is more YouTube music.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, for those who don't realize this, Charlie probably listens to more music than I do because he tends to wear, like, if he's doing anything around the house, he tends to wear a headset, like his Bluetooth headset or earpiece, whatever you call it, and like just listens all day, every day,
Okay. I mean,
even more than I do.
I listen all day, every day, but I try and avoid headphones whenever I can.
It just depends on my mood, but I will say I don't listen to as much as I used to. I find a balance now, Tim. I do listen a lot when I'm working, though. And to be fair, if anybody in the stratosphere that listens to this happens to use a Discord server as your means of chat at work, because apparently that is a thing people do, which I didn't realize when I started working here, but it's actually more common than you realize. If you listen to Spotify on your computer, it will show up on your Discord status for everybody who works with you to see. And every time you update said Spotify or you update said Discord, even if you turn it off somehow, the stupid setting comes back.
I remember it used to be like that. That was an MSN Messenger thing.
I know it's very old school, and it's not that I don't mind people seeing the music that I listen to that much, but every once in a while I'm probably not listening to the most. Because I have to remember I'm an HR manager. Not everything fits that mode, so I have to be very careful.
Yeah, I mean, we at work we have WebEx, And I mean, I don't listen to my Spotify on my work computer. I have it on my phone, Bluetooth through a little speaker on my desk. I try and keep this kind of stuff off my work computer wherever possible. But there have been some occasions where I've had to fire Spotify up on my work computer. We do an award ceremony, and sometimes I'll do backing music on that. And there's been some of the things we've had presentations, and they wanted music in the background, and I'll fire up my Spotify for that. But I mean, WebEx does not pull in your Spotify listening habits.
Just a heads up, guys. And it's funny because I forget that it like when I Discord updates like every other day. Tim is one of those systems, so I don't think about it. I'll get a little update, and then 2 or 3 days later, one of my employees will write me saying, "Oh, I like the song you're listening to," and I'll be like, "Oh, okay. Well, apparently that's back."
You know what you should do is that while they're cheap, you should go on Amazon and buy one of those Amazon Fire cheapo tablets.
I mean, I have a tablet that I can listen to.
Yeah, and then pump that into some speakers on your desk, and no one will ever know.
I mean, I have a Samsung Galaxy tablet, like actually a nice new one. I'm just lazy and forget about it, to be honest. So I probably should. But anyway, that is my PSA for anyone listening. But anyway, what's next on your list, Tim? What we got?
All right. So this one is a song I don't remember listening to a great deal, but it's on the list, so it must be correct.
You said that like 37 times so far.
Yeah, well, as I said, the problem is this list is so polluted with my band background music. But I mean, this song definitely is not on that list.
All right.
This is from the album Color by Numbers. This is Culture Club, and this is the song "It's a Miracle."
It's kind of random. I mean, I love Culture Club, but I don't really find Tim listening to Culture Club even often.
I don't know, the whole of that album that it comes from, Color by Numbers, is absolutely superb. People forget how good Boy George is, and also how good of a band Culture Club was. So you think, like being an 80s pop act, it was just a bunch of random studio musicians with Boy George fronting it. But no, even now, like, I mean, I think they still play, but I watched a concert on Amazon Prime from a few years ago, and it was more or less exactly your standard Culture Club lineup. Yeah. And it surprised me how incredibly good they were.
But it does what it does it because when you listen to like their music, there was a quality to it. Do you know what I mean, Tim? Like sure. That I think like sometimes maybe that's missed from like the obvious eye, but for me, when it comes to Culture Club, I think there was a quality to it that you don't get in a lot of other bands. So that's not surprising.
100%.
And they also formed the whole new wave pop thing. But that was them. They brought on like kind of like transcend what was currently on the radio, I feel. But yeah, there are some other new age and synthetic bands, but I feel like Culture Club embodied that.
Sure, and I mean there are other hits, Karma Chameleon and all that kind of stuff, but yeah, they
Karma
were...
Chameleon lives rent free in my head 24/7. That and Do You Really Want to Hurt? One of my favorite. Oh, Tim, I have a pop reference for that. By the way, I know you have never watched this movie, but it's one of my favorite movies. There's a movie. It's called Without a Paddle. In it, there is a part where the kid was like hiding from like the bad guys, and underneath the little thing he's singing to himself, "Do you really?" Because he was sad, he was trying to keep it to himself, and he was just like, "Do you really want to hurt me?" And then the bad guys walk up to the hole and they go, "Yes, we really want to hurt you. Yes, we really want to make you cry." And then the one bad guy stops, and the other one starts like belting it out, and he's just staring at it. Anyway, very specific, but I always think of that when I think of Culture Club.
Well, the one I think of is from the film Electric Dreams, which is a film I love. Yeah. I love the film Electric Dreams. Also from the fact that some of it was shot in Twickenham next to where I used to work, but that is beside the point. But the soundtrack album to Electric Dreams is absolutely superb. It is not on Spotify. People have made like their own playlist of it, but a lot of the tracks are missing. But one track which is really, really good is the Culture Club song "The Dream," and it is a real massive power ballad. And Boy George's vocal performance on this is absolutely amazing.
I feel like it's very underrated. I've heard it 1,000 times though, and I did not know this movie that Tim was talking about existed, of course, until Tim made me show it to Charlie. So there you go.
Yeah,
But anyway.
I highly recommend Electric Dreams. Last time I checked, it was on YouTube. So I'm going to put the whole thing on YouTube. And I acquired a copy, which was like a Blu-ray rip type thing, because that's like the best quality version that I've ever seen. But it is a classic 80s cheese 80s film with a plot which is terrible, where the computer falls in love with the girl in the house next door, and it's got Bud Cort in it, who was in Harold. Bud Cort is the voice of the computer who was in Harold and Maude, if that's a film you're familiar with.
It is not. I'm not sure if you're speaking English.
Have you ever seen it? Even I've seen that, the film Harold and Maude.
Harold and Maude? Not a thing, Tim. Tim, please.
Okay.
Harold, I'm Googling it. Harold.
And Cat Stevens does all the music in Harold and Maude.
From the 70s?
It's an arty film. It's about this young man who falls in love with a lady who's like 70 years old.
Nope. Never have seen this before. This is very British.
I don't think it's a US film, but as I said, famously Cat Stevens does the
people in
soundtrack.
it look so British. Even down to their coats and their little outfits. Well, there you go, guys. I learned something new.
Yeah, it's a real quirky art film, really.
Maybe that's why it's giving Brit. So I just associate that with, because it does say it's from California. So, and it's part of the American Film Institute's 100 funniest films of all time.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily funny. It's like thought-provoking type.
That's cult
film.
following.
Yeah, it's a cult film, most definitely.
Well, there you go, guys. I'll have to go down this rabbit hole because no, it doesn't even ring a bell.
I don't know.
It does say romantic black comedy, so not necessarily comedy in the sense of like haha, but more comedy and like dark comedy.
Well, yeah, because as I said, that I think that Harold, I think he's like 17 or 18 years old, and he falls in love with this lady who's like 70.
Maybe it's because the clothing in this they're giving very like in the 60s and 70s American clothing was very influenced by British clothing because of the Cultural Revolution. I think that's why it looks very British to me the more I look at it.
There we are. But anyway, that's a film tip for you. That's a film I've seen. But to be fair, I'd never heard of it until Hannah made me watch it.
And apparently Cat Stevens has the original motion picture soundtrack.
He does. His music features all the way through it.
Take your guess. News to me. Hannah's smarter than all of us.
I mean, she's incredibly smart. I will tell you that.
Fair enough. Tip's like, yeah, you're not wrong. All right, what's next?
Okay, so I'm going to close this out. I mean, there's 100 songs on this list, and I've just tried to pick out some of the ones I thought were interesting because most of them are from that band list. This one is definitely not from the band list, and this is one that featured last year, so I'm glad it's in there again.
Okay.
This is from the WWE anthology, The Federation Years.
Of course it is.
And this is a song called Snake Bit, which is the theme music for Jake the Snake Roberts.
What a very specific, nuanced, and very tip thing if I've ever heard it.
And do you remember a video game, I think probably in the 90s, called Gauntlet?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Did you ever remember seeing it in a video arcade?
Yeah.
And it was one of those games where it's what they call a tracked mode, where you have like a console game in a video arcade, but it'll do certain things when you're not playing the game to attract people to come in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it had very high quality, loud stereo speakers in it. And it had this theme tune that it would play at absolute top volume. And the idea is it draws your attention, makes you want to come over to the game and play it.
Yeah.
And it had like 4-player, and you could join at any time. So you could be playing and someone else could come in and join and all this kind of stuff. Well, Snake Bit by Jim Johnson from the WWF, it sounds very similar to the Gauntlet music.
Interesting. So do you know if they're supposed to be the same or they just happen to sound very similar?
I think it's just pure coincidence. It's not identical, but there's enough similarities between the two. When I first started hearing this, I was like, isn't this the music from Gauntlet? And I pulled out the music from Gauntlet, and it's different, but it's the same kind of vibe, if you know what I mean.
I got you. I mean, I do know what you're talking about. I can see like the arcade machine in my head, and it was always like four different colors, and there was like a big red line on it, and it was bright. And I know what it is, but that was probably what, late 80s, early 90s. That's an
Yeah.
old one.
When we had a caravan at Salsa, which is actually where my parents live now, but we had a caravan down there. My grandparents had a caravan, and we used to go down there for holidays every year. They had a amusement arcade there, and they always used to get the latest and greatest video games down there. They had Outrun, which is the one where you like sat in the massive car. They had the cabinet, the full sit down cabinet version of Star Wars, the Vector game, when that came out. That was very exciting. But Gauntlet was a big thing, and I think they had a couple of these Gauntlet games at one point. And so I just remember this being really loud and the sound quality being really good.
Well, there you go, guys. If you haven't seen it, it's on the YouTubes. Just look up Gauntlet video game; it'll come right up.
Yeah, and also go onto your streaming service and bring up Snake Bit from the WWF anthology.
And learn from me and Tim that whatever you do in life will affect your Spotify rap. So just be prepared for that to be a thing.
Absolutely.
And who knew Tim had so much money invested in Led Zeppelin? I'm kidding. All right, bye.
See you later. Bye-bye.
To find me out for another day to